Hi, everybody. My name is Shamash. I'm author of this book, Mindfulness for Dummies, and I'm going to be talking to you about the idea that I'm not a doer, which is an ancient concept. And the first place that I came across it is a book called the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita it's like the Bible for people from the Hindu tradition. And it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And Krishna, the kind of the god, is talking to Arjuna, and one of the key concepts that he teaches him is that he's not the doer of his actions. And this comes up quite often in that tradition and a lot of Eastern traditions, and people find it quite hard to believe. So I'm going to talk you through it and why it's a really, really important concept, maybe one of the most fundamental concepts to understand from Eastern philosophy, Eastern traditions, and how life-changing it can be if you can understand it fully and accept it, if you believe it to be true. So the idea that you are not the doer. So here's the breaking news. So consider these questions. So first of all, did you decide to be born? I'm guessing you're probably saying no to that. So you didn't decide to be born. So you didn't do that. It happened. There were certain circumstances and situations that led you to be born. And whilst you were being formed in your mother's womb and you were born, did you decide to, did you actually make your heart form and your lungs form and your legs and your arms? You don't. You got absolutely no clue how that works. It happened. It just grew. And then you were born. And then when you were born, did you choose your parents? No, of course you didn't. They were just there, and they happened to be your parents. And you started to grow up, and as a very young baby, did you choose your name? Did you choose the location that you're born, the country you're born, how much money you'd have? Did you choose the nursery that you went to if you went to a young person's school? Did you choose your aunts and uncles? No, you didn't choose any of that. So that just happened. And did you choose to be conscious? Well, in a way, you didn't. Consciousness came to you. This is one of the things when people practice mindfulness, they think they're cultivating awareness or mindfulness, and it can feel like that. But if you think about it a bit deeper, do you actually even control consciousness that much? Or does consciousness come to you? Like right now I'm speaking and you're listening, but do you know how that consciousness works? It's just happening, right? So, okay, so you were born, you were a young baby, you came to age around 2, and then at that age, self-consciousness arises. So up to that point, there's a sense everything is one. You don't even know that you're separate from anything else. Everything just happens. You get to a certain age and you're taught your name, and they keep pointing to the mirror saying that that's you. And most animals don't get that sense of self-awareness. When they look in the mirror, they just see another animal there. But there's a few animals, and one of them is human beings, where you look into a mirror and you think, that's me. So that sense of self-identification. And I would say that's the point where the ego is born. And so you've got this sense of ego, so sense of separation from others. And again, in Eastern traditions, even in mindfulness, the ego is seen as a negative thing. But if you don't have that sense of separation between you and the rest of the world, are you able to even operate in the world? I don't think so. You wouldn't be able to decide to eat or go somewhere or do this or do that. You need to have that sense of separation to be able to function. So this little ego develops, and you have your terrible twos where you want everything and get very upset if your parents or guardians don't give you what you want. And time goes by. And we believe at a certain age, I don't know what age officially, but there's a certain age where people say you chose the action. So maybe not when you're age 2 or 3 or 4, but at a certain age, people believe that you are responsible for your actions. You are the doer. You've chosen to do something and you're doing it. But when does that specifically happen? If you think about it, why would there be one age or one day you're not really responsible for your actions, then suddenly the next day you are. It doesn't really make sense. And even gradually becoming responsible for your actions does actually work like that. So anyway, let's continue through the ages. So you get a bit older, maybe you get to your teens, and even teenagers. I think people appreciate that they can get overwhelmed through the hormones going through their system, and they can end up doing actions or behaving in a way that they wouldn't normally do if they were adults. But as teenagers, they just can't really control themselves so well. Maybe their brain hasn't fully developed, which it hasn't actually. The emotional part of their brain doesn't have the braking system that maybe an adult brain would have, and so they may not behave in a way that we would think is appropriate, and they get frustrated themselves with it too. But anyway, age just goes on, and you may get into your 20s or 30s, and at that point, people think, yes, people are completely in control of their actions. They are the doer. They choose what they do, and they take conscious action. Think about it a little bit more. This talk that I'm giving right now to you, what I'm sharing with you, I purposely didn't plan it, partly because I'm lazy, no, because I wanted to actually prove the concept about I'm not the doer, and I don't know exactly what thought I'm going to have next. So there's action happening right now. There's thoughts arising from my unconscious into my conscious brain. Those thoughts are turning into actions, and I'm actually sharing an idea. So there's doing happening right now. But if you think about it and reflect on it a bit deeper, in one sense, yeah, there's this claim that I'm the doer, but on another level, I'm not coming up with the thoughts. The thoughts are coming to my head. I'm not generating the consciousness. Consciousness is happening. And from that, there's a certain motivation that's arising and actions taking place. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, for anyone who's ever done mindfulness and meditation, you know that you can't really control your mind much at all. You may feel like you are a little bit, but most of the time, thoughts are just popping into our heads. And most people would agree that it's the thoughts that pop into our head that leads to reflections, that leads to choices, that leads to decisions, and leads to actions. And therefore, if that's true, that means that actions are just happening. Thoughts are arising, motivations are arising, and actions happening. And so if you follow and agree with that line of thought, you're not so much the doer. I'm not so much the doer of my actions. Like I'm saying, I'm not fully planning this. This is just happening as a stream of consciousness. I'm sharing ideas with you. And you will be listening to this, and you would have a certain response or reaction happening to you based on what I'm saying. So if your brain, if your unconscious happens to agree with what I'm saying, you'd be like saying, yeah, this Shamash guy, he's got, it's making sense. Maybe I'm going to follow him a bit more, or I'm going to look into this a bit more. I'm going to read this book. Or the reaction may automatically be, this guy hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. And so you may plan like, how do I block this person from? So that could be happening. But both of those actions, whether you do that one or the other, it's actually coming to you, isn't it? It's something that's arising from your unconscious mind into your conscious mind, leading to certain motivation and action. And that is based on all your past experiences. So we're all conditioned to a certain extent, we're all programmed to a certain extent based on our past experiences. So I've had my past experiences, and that's why, I'm sharing this now, because I've happened to have gone to some philosophy classes, and I don't know why, but I had a tendency to be interested in philosophy a little bit, and interested in mindfulness because of my genetics and my tendencies and my environment, and my parents were interested in it a bit. And that's why I'm sharing this, because of all that. And you will be listening to it because out of your background, because of your interest, because of your conditioning and your programming. And so, although most of our society, I would say 99.999% believe that they are the doer and everybody else is the doer, there is a small fraction that believe that we're not the doer, and that actually thoughts arises, emotions arise, actions happen, and consequences result in that. So there's kind of actions and reactions that's automatically happening. And when you see things that way, there's a few benefits of it. First benefit is that you don't have to plan so much. So if you consider yourself less of the doer and things are happening rather than you doing them, then you're going to put tons of effort into anything. Like, for example, this that I'm doing right now, I don't have to think about, oh, I need to get it right, or I must get it perfect, and I must plan every single thing I'm going to say, and what will happen if I do this, and what will happen if I do that. Because if you kind of come to the conclusion you're not the doer, you just let it flow in a way, let it rip, let it flow. So there's the personal benefit of that. So you're less likely to get overwhelmed or experience burnout and strong emotions based on the activities that you do. You're less likely to blame yourself when things go wrong, because if you reflect on it, your actions are based on your environment, your genetics. You're less likely to feel guilty or ashamed when you make mistakes because you're not the doer, so they happened. And you're less likely to be worried about the future too, because of things that you cannot control things too much, so they just happen and unfold in their own way. So that's the benefit for you personally, huge benefits if you think about it. And there's also benefits for relationships too, because of other people and their behavior and actions. When you turn, I used to be very frustrated when I turned the television on and see how people were behaving and acting. And it's very easy to blame people. That's what we're conditioned to do in our society. He's doing this wrong. He needs to take, or she needs to take responsibility for that. And I can understand that argument, but this is something a bit radically different. Another way of seeing things, which is that if you're not the doer, then they're not the doer either. And they've had a certain conditioning, they've had a certain upbringing, they've got certain genetics, and that is causing them to behave in that way too. And so then there's less blame and there's less anger towards others. And this is not a conclusion that you'll all agree with, and you may be passionately against this way of thinking, and you may believe that it's very important to be angry at people that do things that are wrong, and that's your conditioning, and that's resulting in actions that you'll do. But yeah, this is what seems to, I can't find a flaw in the argument personally. It's got a lot of consequences to this way of thinking, but these are part of ancient insights that have been shared over thousands and thousands of years, and one of the fundamentals ones is that we are not the doer. So it might be something that you want to investigate. Think about it, like reflect on yesterday or today. Think about a certain action that you did, and were you absolutely the doer? Like, let's say if you even take a decision after this, like you've decided that now you're going to carry on watching this, or now you're going to stop watching this, whether you want to continue or stop. Are you taking that action, or are you making that decision, or is that decision coming to you? Is it arising from your unconscious into your conscious? It's a really, really interesting concept, and almost don't know anyone who I could talk to about it. Actually, very few people are willing to explore it. So if you do think that there's some truth in it, then please do get in touch and chat to me about it, because I think it's really interesting and powerful and potentially life-changing too. And it's a bit different too. It's about seeing that the ego's not the boss in the I guess, because the ego has the idea that I am the doer and I do everything, and it's to do with arrogance in a way, that I think my thoughts, I choose my actions, and there's a great natural humility that comes through the insight that actually I'm not the ego. The ego is something that arises and actions take place from there, and there's consequences of that, and there's a sense of being in tune with nature as well. So anyway, thanks for connecting, thanks for listening, and look forward to discussing this more if you have any comments about it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you tomorrow for something else.